Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Security Table. This is Chris Romeo, and I'm joined by Tanya and Izar and Matt. And we are going to continue a conversation that we started in the previous episode. So we got into this idea of, is there a talent shortage in cybersecurity? Started unpacking who are the culprits and why there could be a talent shortage. But one of the things that we're going to do with this episode is we're going to flip it around, and we're going to focus from the perspective of the person who's trying to get hired, the new graduate, the CS student that has maybe a minor in cybersecurity, or somebody who's coming out of a coding boot camp, or there's cybersecurity boot camps now too. And so I want to think about this from their perspective. What are they experiencing when they look into this world of cybersecurity? And so, Matt, let's go ahead and start with you here. What are kind of your thoughts about what's the perception for this person who's brand new and's trying to get into our industry?
Well, uh, yeah, you would have to pick on me, wouldn't you? Uh, so I think it's a daunting task. So first off, we can talk about a couple areas, but we'll start with where do they even know to get started, right? So if they're in school, uh, they may be learning word of mouth, people they've been in classes with, or the professors. The school sometimes has job boards and things like that. But otherwise, where are they going? They're going to LinkedIn. They're going to Indeed. They're going to Monster. I don't think Monster's around anymore, but where do you go, right, to find these jobs? Or they have companies in mind, either ones they've interned for or ones that they are just familiar with. Of course, that's the big FANG corporations that everyone wants to get into, it seems. Um, so the first problem is just finding the jobs, right? And what what can they search on, right? How do you find the ones you're looking for? I want to remind you, viewers of this podcast, of this episode, particularly in the last one, we did talk about, we brought up this concept that there's a lot of different types of roles in the security space. And so if you're new to the security space, how do you know what to look for? If you just do a keyword search for security, you're going to find everything from a security guard all the way up to a CISO, probably, right? And that may also exclude a whole bunch of, or may get a lot of garbage in between, right? Um, Development roles may have security in those job descriptions, and they'll show up they'll show up in a search, but they're not security roles. They're developer roles because they're working on a security product, or they have to have security knowledge or experience, or they have to, or they are security roles as developers. And so I think the first thing is there's a volume of stuff they have to get through. And I'm going to throw this to Tanya, actually, because I know Tanya's been involved directly with writing, job descriptions for security
Glad you
roles.
asked. I was just going to jump in there. People, I actually spent some time just looking at LinkedIn because I was curious about our conversation last time. And I feel like sometimes the way the job descriptions are written isn't necessarily the way it's intended to come across. It's almost like they're looking for these, they're looking for these kind of super experts with these unrealistic, criteria that you have to meet, and not really and like even the job titles themselves, like there's very vague. It's like, some of them are compliance related, some of them are security. So I think the industry could definitely do better in writing up exactly what they're looking for and making it a little bit more specific, but also, really, really thinking about what are really the requirements that somebody needs to meet for somebody coming out of university. Because I was looking at it and I'm like, I've been in this industry probably, like, I'm the baby out of all of you. I think I've been in the industry 12 years, and I'm like, I don't think I can meet some of these credentials, so I'm like, oh, nope. So, yeah, I think I think recruiters probably need to get better trained in really how to position the roles that they need and write it in a way where it's a little bit more appealing and not so scary. And I think you had brought up an analogy, Izar, around, I think you were talking about, you don't need specialist, doctors, like a neuroscientist or a neurologist. I think sometimes we're looking for perfection and we're just like, that good enough could become just absolutely exceptional. And the other thing is the security professionals are not born, like you don't buy a pot and suddenly you have the security professional, right? They're developed, So you may have been born. Not all of us were, right? Anyway.
Were you born a security professional? Did you just begin life and your career as a security pro?
No, I was incepted as one. Like there was.
Wait, who did that?
Who did a black background? And there I was. No, I, as many of you, I came into this totally by accident. And I think that if we go over most of the episodes of the AppSec podcast, we learned that a lot of the people who are leading this industry nowadays that were in there got where they were basically by accident. And I want to take a step back and point out one resource, Alyssa Miller's book, the Cybersecurity Career Guide, right? And I think that it's a unique resource. I didn't read the whole thing. Thank God I don't need to read the whole thing. But the part that I did look at and that called my attention is the bit where she points out that, yes, cybersecurity is a huge thing. There's a lot of different facets and stuff. And that for somebody going in today, it's pretty scary. And that a bit of self-reflection before they go in can go a long way in telling them where they want to put their head in first, right? I mean, I know people who started in, governance and saw the light and moved to AppSec. And I know people who started in AppSec and moved to infrastructure and stuff like that. And everybody has that flashbang moment that they notice, I prefer to do the other stuff. But Alyssa actually puts a number of questions in front of the reader that helps direct them more or less where they should be going. So I think that for the millions and millions of people who are listening to us right now, if either you are interested in a job, or if you know somebody who is, or if you even want to point your recruiters to figuring out how those things work and how people think, I think it's a great resource. So yeah, yep. Close parenthesis. Now, what were we talking about again?
We were going to explore further, because that other word's banned, a little bit about the way these job descriptions are written up. And
yeah. And actually, so let me just jump in here quick. I just did a quick search on one of the recruiting sites for entry level security roles, and the top ones I got. So this goes back to how do I know as a new person what I'm looking for, right? And marry that to the set of options that are available to me. I just did a quick search for entry level security, and I got a security analyst at the National Security Agency, as it turns out, a electronic warfare technician, a floor manager at a hospital or at a hospitality group, and an unarmed security guard.
Wow.
So as an entry level, none of those make sense.
Let me put it like this. I have a lot of hope for ChatGPT in writing job descriptions, right? Because I know some great recruiters and I love them dearly, but I know a lot more who will turn to me on LinkedIn and say that they read my resume, they are very impressed by my experience, and they want to know if I want to be a Java embedded engineer on an entry level.
It's even worse, though. It's entry level.
So you know,
an entry level job.
It's not only that they have difficulty in writing; they have difficulty in reading as well. So flame.
I totally agree. Totally 100%. Similar to you, I got solicited on LinkedIn, and what they are presenting to me, I'm like, I don't even think that's in alignment with what I've ever been, like what I've ever done in the last 12 years. So I don't know, maybe their search engines are bust, or they just they need to train up their HR recruiters to be able to kind of really read between the lines.
Or it's basically,
I mean,
that you have a computer. Here, come write embedded Java.
no, I mean, it's lazy recruiting, right? Let's call it what it is.
But it's
any of us, if any of the four of us, and I'm sure in the last month, one of us has gotten a job. I know I did. So there, I've even ticked the box. I got a job offer for an entry-level position in cybersecurity. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Did you, I mean, like, I'm not all that or anything, but I've been doing this for 25 years. I probably don't need an entry-level job. But it's lazy recruiting. They didn't do any analysis of, they just sprayed and prayed. They said, let's just send this to 5 million people, and hopefully one of them will be the right candidate.
You know, I had a theory. I went looking for why that happened, because it actually, in the same week, I got 3 different Java entry position offers. And I went looking for what. And this was like 3 months ago. And I noticed that in 2009 or something like that, I took the LinkedIn Java test and failed it. Perhaps they're just being like optimistic. I learned something since then, and my already at entry level. So it's the explanation that I had.
I have 2 points. By the way, wake up. Entry level, Chris is from 0 to 25 years experience. The other one is, so my daughter, she's in her final year at university, and she is working part-time for an HR recruiting company. And so she's never really been exposed to a lot of technology. I mean, she was more into, mathematics and, physics. And so in this job, she was actually recruiting people to go into the technology sector. And it was amazing because, like, she was coming to me and it's like, Mom, I know what a stack developer is. I know what a front end GUI developer, like she had never known what these concepts were. And I think a lot of the ones that actually go out, in LinkedIn and looking for people are maybe just not as senior, right? They're, they may not, be as exposed. I'm almost 98% sure exposed to security type roles and functions and where they should go.
So what I'm hearing is that now that your daughter knows all of that, she's ready for an entry position as a Java embedded.
We're determined to fill that position. Like,
because she knows all the check boxes, right?
But it's fascinating. I don't think I don't know what HR recruiting does, what level of training. I know her company really did train her really well because she was talking about this, the software development lifecycle, security, even the security development lifecycle. She goes, I get what you're doing now, but I don't know if all companies do that, for a 21-year-old.
So let's pull that back to security and what we were talking about. So I passed the LinkedIn entry-level thing, and now I am in front of Tanya as a candidate to my first cybersecurity entry position. Tanya, how does that experience go? What is it that you are asking people?
Oh, what would I ask? Show me your code. No, it's like you want to be able to understand the experience, right?
Important. That goes together with a discussion that we had a while ago. Do cybersecurity people need to know how to code?
There's so many tools. Do you need, tools?
You went straight into show me your code.
But this is a
Freudian in there.
You can't have a wide open conversation like this. This goes back to what role are you looking for? What role do you want and what role do you need?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's choose a role. We are interviewing somebody for an entry role in...
Well, let's say we're going to make them a security champion.
Security champion as an entry role?
Well...
No.
All right. No, okay, we can't do that.
You could, but you would train them up. Again, remember, security professionals are developed.
Okay, let's keep security champion for another day. I already see Chris thinking about it.
All right. Let's start with the role here. I'll throw out a role. Let me throw out a better one this time. A security incident an analyst who looks at a SIEM, a CIM.
SOC analyst.
A SOC analyst. Thank you. There we go.
Okay. So, Tanya, you're interviewing somebody for a SOC analyst position. What's the first thing that you ask?
Do they like?
How are you doing?
Do you like working overtime? No kidding.
Do you have 25 years of experience?
Yeah, do you have 25-year experience? No, this is interesting because my brain's going off in 14 different directions, because I think you want to look for practical skills like coming in, what do they know, what have they learned. You have to look at also your own environment, like how do you run, how much training time are you going to take to be able to get this person operational where you need them to be. What really matters to me a lot is, to be honest, is soft skills, especially in a SOC environment. Communication is everything.
Nice. Okay, so
we have to get a nice bizarre.
All the management questions that you just started thinking about. What is the first thing you're going to ask this person?
Okay, there's no wrong or right answer here. It's like,
there's the one I'm thinking, which is the right one, and there's everything else that you're going to
This is what's called a lose-lose situation.
Yeah.
Win here.
So come on, well, what are you going to ask them first? You have it. You just said it. You just said what you think is most important.
I'm going to defer to Matt. My brain. I've talked a lot. Matt, you come on, save the day here.
Well, so the first question I would ask them, in all seriousness, here is, what in your background or your experience makes you an appropriate candidate for this role, right? There needs to be some description of that role, right? We're talking about a SOC analyst. The person has to be diligent. The person has to be capable to read, to be fast, to understand things at a fast pace, and to be able to follow instructions. We're talking about entry level here. What?
That's awesome, because it just took what Tanya said, the soft skills, and you put it into a framework of what is it that you've done before this, then you can bring into this.
The other question is why are you applying for this?
I know, because they need money. That's a given.
Yeah, but I mean,
I asked this a little differently, so I get the same result, but I don't lead the witness as much. My first question to everyone I've ever interviewed, probably in the last 10 years, tell me your story.
Yeah.
True. Because that way I don't lead them into, because I want to hear off the cuff what they want to tell me from that perspective.
But look at the difference here. Tell me your story. I'm going to tell you the things that I think are interesting about me, and I'm going to sort of mask the things that are less interesting. But the way that Matt asked, what is it that you've done before that you think you're going to carry into this? You are asking this person to look into themselves and say, okay, so I have curiosity, or I have tenacity, or I don't give too much importance to my mental health. Things that are actually important to the job at hand.
I will say that the difference between Chris's the way he asked it and you, Matt, is I feel like that's something I can absolutely pre-can an answer for. Like that's the type of typical interview question that you may get asked when you go for a job. Whereas Chris is like, you're sitting in there and you're waiting for all these structured, questions coming at you. You may go into Indeed and look up the company and say, what are all the cybersecurity questions he ask? And then you sit down and you're ready, and Chris goes, tell me your story. And it's like, boom.
I
find it can be a diffusing situation. It can diffuse too, because it's not a scary question, because I'm asking you to tell me your story. Don't tell me the story I want to hear. Tell me who you, and what I find in that though is I learn a lot about that candidate that they wouldn't have told me in a structured answer, because sometimes they tell me all kinds of things about their life that are interesting to, I had one person told me that he was a motorcycle racer in his free time. And so I asked a couple of follow-up questions about, what does it take to run a team? Oh, well, we have to have mechanics. We have to, it's like, oh, so I left that that portion of the conversation going, this is somebody who can manage a group of 4 to 5 people pretty easily. Because if you can do that in the heat of a motorcycle race, then that transfer. Now I'm getting away from entry level, but that was just where the illustration kind of.
But maybe,
I was going to say, are you? Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say maybe that question though for people who are entry level is just more, it's less, it just makes it easier when you're interviewing. I mean, think about a lot of these kids coming out of university, like it's probably their first interview, maybe second, maybe they've done a couple, maybe they haven't even, their resume hasn't even been looked at, it's been rejected, and now they've got that in, so it's a good lead way in that kind of shows,
we have to extend some grace to them as well. Like that's one thing I always remember. It's like I've been it was a long time ago, but I was in that situation, sitting across the table from somebody, my legs shaking because I'm in this interview for the first time ever after, getting out of college or whatever. And so I think that's just something that we as people that are hiring entry level folks and anybody out there who's hiring an entry level person, I give them a lot more room than I would a senior candidate. I expect a senior candidate to be more, on the ball. Like, I mean, everybody gets nervous a little bit, but.
So I'll have to take this to the next form question in this thing. You're just interviewing somebody entry level for a cybersecurity job, and now you throw where do you see yourself in 5 years? Is that a question that says something or not? Or is it just a feeler?
I think it gives you some perspective on, does this person have a plan for what they want to do with their career? Have they thought about it? If somebody comes back and tells me, no, I have no idea what I want to do, then it's a tell that they haven't really thought about, where they want to go and what they want to do. For me, that's how I read it.
And I think that's okay. There's planners in the world, and there's people who are spontaneous and go with opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it doesn't matter 5 years in the future. Like when I'm doing an entry level interview, I'm trying to answer one question, maybe 2 questions. Am I going to have to, follow this? Is this person going to follow me around and ask me 100 questions a day, or do they have the ability? Can I see something in them that says they're going to go try to figure stuff out? And I always tell people, especially entry level folks that work for me, is I don't want you to spend. I give them a metric about here's how much time you should spend before you come and ask the question. But don't just come and ask me the question. Don't ping me every 5 minutes with, what do I do next? So I mean, but that's what I'll take somebody who says, I don't know anything about a SOC. If they have something in their background that makes me think they're going to figure it out, they're going to learn what they need to learn. And they're not going to sit there and I'm not going to have to micromanage them, because I don't want to micromanage anybody from my entry level all the way up to the most senior.
Okay, so far we want people who are curious but know when to ask for help.
Resourceful,
open-minded,
critical thinkers,
and just to offer a different point of view. One of the best answers that I got for the where do you see yourself in 5 years was cybersecurity evolves at such a pace that it would be irresponsible of me to say right now that I know where I'm going to be in 5 years. I know that I'm going to spend the next 5 years looking for the next place.
That's a great answer.
I like that one.
So they thought about it. They didn't come up with that on the fly. They had pondered it and said, "Hey, this is where it is."
Yep.
Let me ask a question of all of you, because I probably I'm not a manager, so I don't hire people on a daily basis. I've been involved with interviewing people, and obviously I tapped to provide expert opinion, but I don't have that fully direct hiring experience, at least in my current role. When you are looking at a entry level person, how long are you thinking that you're going to have this person in your team in this role, and whether you promote them or they move on to something else or they leave? What's that time frame that you're looking at? Let's do if you're using the SOC example, and maybe it varies by role, but when you're interviewing somebody, are you thinking 5 years or are you thinking 18 months?
I think that's a hard question to well, because I think there's two things that you look at. Entry level means that there's going to be some level of ramp up time for them to be operational and independent. And so that's a hard thing to gauge. Normally entry level, I think you're kind of almost, and depending on the job as well, you may expect anywhere between 3 to 12 months. So, and then you want to be able to make sure that if you've trained them up, they're not going to walk out the door either, right? So, because you've invested that time. So you want them to stay in your team for as long, as much as possible, because, you're investing in that and that development, but then you have to plan about what their next step is. Where do they want to go? And sometimes it may mean moving away from your team and going somewhere else or trying something different, because the security landscape's just so big in so many domains.
What Tanya just described is one of the traits of a good leader. A good leader doesn't hold on to people because they want to. And what you just said, Tanya, is a really powerful thing. You just said you may help that person go do something else inside your company, and maybe even somewhere else, because there's somewhere else that they need to grow. And I'm in the same boat. Like, I like to think about, how am I going to help this person get to the next level? What is the next level for them? And some of that comes from one-on-ones and coaching and listening to them tell me that either they don't know, and if they don't know, then I challenge them to go think about it and figure out where they want to go. If they do, then my job as your manager is to help you get there. And I'm a failure if I don't help you, if I don't knock down doors, if I don't help you get the things you need to meet your own development goals. And like Tanya said, it could be, I don't think there's any one answer for a period of time. I think it comes down to the complexity of the job. And but my hope is that we bring somebody into the SOC, they're doing a great job and they're learning everything and they're growing. 18 months, maybe even as early as 12 months, if they're really killing it, we should be looking about what's the next thing. We should be getting them some exposure to the next thing, whether it's becoming an incident response team member or, whatever the next progression is going to be coming out of the SOC in that particular company.
Which brings us to a very important aspect of this whole "are we missing talent" myth. And I think that we spoke a bit about the technical side, we spoke a bit about the soft skill side, we spoke about how people get into the door. I think that each one of us, from hearing all of you, I know that you are heavily involved into this. Each one of us, to a great extent, likes the part of the job that involves mentorship.
Absolutely.
And one thing that I can tell for myself is the past few times that I had the opportunity of mentoring someone, very quickly it stopped being move this bit to that bit and turn on this flag and start this virtual machine. And very quick it became not only the soft skills, but the whole framework of being a professional, building your brand, relating to other people, doing the politics of the workplace and all that stuff. Do you guys think that this stuff related to cyber is different from other? Let me put it like this. Somebody who got to a staff engineer by writing code and somebody who got to a staff security engineer, do they need different sets of soft skills?
Yes. Yes, I think that they do. And I think that's because it's the nature of their work. So a developer who's writing code and working way up the ranks needs to have listening skills, critical thinking skills, the ability to pull in information like requirements and deal with schedules and things like that. And as they move up the ranks, they're going to be developers first. And I think a couple of us here have done this sort of work, right? We've been developers take direction, then developers sort of provide direction, then developers operating independently, or not independently, but like autonomously, I suppose. all the way up, and then up to staff engineer, where you're seen as the the guru on the tool chain, or you're an expert in the language, and you're doing program leadership, and you're doing and so you have the ability to work with other engineers in your area. You have the ability to manage schedules and work with and manage out and up. Right, you have to both manage your leadership as well as managing your other program peers. Right. Whereas the staff cyber engineer, and I guess I have to be careful here about which role we're really talking about, but somebody who's doing infosec as an example, as opposed to AppSec, it's a little bit different. Your requirements are coming from different places, and your peers are different. But then you need better communication skills because you're talking to people who, in many cases, don't want you there, right? Or you're not seen as a partner, and there's a lot of partner building. So I think the skills are there are some overlap, but I think by and large, I see that there are very specialized skills in both areas. One is more focused at how do I make this program successful, this overall, and how do I make the schedule on time and meet numbers and make sure our management is aware, et cetera. The other one is doing some of that, but really their role is also to help create this partnership and drive change and not be in the news and keep their CISO from being fired and all of that sort of stuff. And so the skill set is different, and those soft skills especially are going to be different, in my opinion.
Both of you are making me think about something that has really hit home to me. So most of my career, I was a program manager. I was at Microsoft, and there wasn't really a lot of mentorship program for a program manager. And what I realized that I'm really drawn to culture. So I don't know if you know, but I used to be a pro-am bodyboarder in Ireland. So I was very much immersed in the surfing culture. And then I ski patrol up in my local mountain, and we're all there every Monday working together as a team, and we support each other. And then I'm almost working in an EMS system as an EMT. But security is exactly the same. It's the first time ever where it was like, hey, you want to mentor? Like, I remember when I stepped into my first job, real big job in security. I think both of you were there. Like, there's this warm mentoring, here to support you kind of culture that it's so, like, for example, when you go to a conference, you see people you haven't seen in a while. It's like, oh, it's so good to see you. There's something very unique about this profession. I don't know about InfoSec. I'm talking purely AppSec. Because there's a level of just understanding of some of the pressures and the impact of what you're doing and what could go wrong. And I think for me, I pay it forward like all of you, but I think the mentorship aspect is that people are so willing to help. Like, I'm sure if I went to somebody in LinkedIn and said, look, I really, really love reading your blogs around security. Would you mind maybe just mentoring me like 1 hour? People are willing to do that, right? So,
yeah, I think that there's a lot of analogies with the military here, so I've never been in the military, so I can't speak about this specifically. But I think it's people who are in stressful situations together, and I guess Tanya, you see this with being an EMT and ski patrol, right? I'm not sure about surfing, but people who in some past lives of work, I've been on incident response teams and customer support groups dealing with crises when they occur. And I think that that's in part where this camaraderie comes into, right? And the notion that there's a small number of us and there's a giant development team or business stakeholders out there, and there's a lot of pressure, and so it pulls people together, and they that they are willing to support each other. I think it's also, though, in a function of the time that we live in, right? So all of us here, I think, have sort of grown up and grown into these roles starting after 9/11, right? Or after the year 2000, effectively. Although, Israel, I know your history probably goes back a bit further.
first, just in case.
Technically, I guess my first job that has security impact data also started before 2000, but I'm really talking about the stuff that like since 2000, and not that that's a hard cutoff, but it makes it a little bit easier just to talk about. We entered a time where collaboration was good. It wasn't the turn of the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s where everyone for themselves, and you were. It seemed like it was a different time to how people operated. It was strict dress code, and we now have the sweater culture or the dress down culture. It's a more relaxed style, and then on top of that, now you have by the way, it's no longer legal to do what we do. Right, a lot of security was under the behind the curtain, so to speak, because some of it was questionable legality, right? And so we entered a phase of our careers and of the industry where collaboration was okay. And so I think that's in part, like we are a tight knit group, and I'll say my area specifically is product security. Product security people don't necessarily, it's sort of a subset of application security, I think. And it's an even smaller set of people. And so I think that goes a long way to why we see what we do in terms of how people interact in the industry.
Yeah. I want to come back around to your kind of the initial question, Nizar, that you asked here about, and kind of Matt's point about seeing differences. I think there's there's more similarity than difference in that core set of skills. Like critical thinking is one that we've mentioned, and it was mentioned in this context. Just general social skills, being able to speak at a meeting where there's more than two people in the room. I think there's a lot of commonality in those things. And I think you can even extend those into other fields outside of technology. Being, critical thinking is something that fits into it's hard to find a job where that was based on getting a college degree and then getting a job in the field that doesn't require critical thinking, doesn't require social skills. So I think there's more similarity than difference.
I think that if I look at the bottom line of all that we spoke about in the past hour and the past episode, I think that, yes, we need more bodies. No, we are not doing a good job in publishing out who are these people that we need. Yes, we are able to produce these people based on them having a very easy to define set of basic qualities. Yes, we can teach on the job. Yes, people enjoy teaching on the job. And yes, if we look at the origin story of many, many, many leading people in this industry, we will find that they started in completely different things, right? And that's not a new thing. If you look at, what was his name? Cliff Stoll, which you guys probably don't remember the name, but he had this great book called The Cuckoo's Egg. And it's one of the first ever, I think, computer security stories out there. The guy started as an astronomer, right? And he went into security because of an error of 10 cents in a bill that he got. But the point is, he started as something completely different even before there was no security. So I think yes, it's not a myth that we are missing people. I think that we can solve this gap mostly with tools that we already have, mostly with the approach that we already have. And the important thing now is to convince people that they can do this. It's funny because sometimes I catch myself talking with friends of my son. He's 13 years old now. Well, almost 14 next week. And they ask, so what do you do for a living? And once upon a time, it was hard to explain. But nowadays, it's easy to sit down with this 14 years old, relate to things that they read in the news all the day or things that they experience every day. Yeah, remember that, I don't know, that thing you got on Instagram saying, click here to get $1,000 in Bitcoin. Here's what's happening behind that. And they have that interest. They ask those questions. They are looking at that as a possible field to get busy at. So what was it? We started by saying, is it a myth that we are missing people? No, I think that it's a reality. The myth is that we can't find them. We just have to meet them.
That's a heck of a way to put this together. I don't think we can add anything else. So
that is just, you have to repeat it again. You always have one thing each podcast. Can you repeat that again? Just repeat it.
Look in the shop for the t-shirt later on.
No, that's really good. That's a good way to summarize and bring it all together, because we don't want to just sit around and talk about problem space. We want to offer some solutions to the world, and I think people can take away. These are, to your point here, things you just shared. There's some things that people can take away, and there's some action to be done here by all the different parties that we talked about here. So why don't we leave this conversation right here, and we will continue our next episode to talk about something else around the security table.